Well, hey everybody, Ken Plume here with another edition of Force 5. That is the show where I have a special guest on and we discuss their top 5 Star Wars. It originally started as figures. I'm gonna say collectibles. We've had a lot of range of stuff, and the guests what they've picked for their selections when they've come on. So figures, collectibles. It's Star Wars. We have for a very special guest for this episode. You see him right there. Voice actor extraordinaire,
Hmm.
a brilliant talent. Darin De Paul, welcome to Force 5.
I'm just carny folk.
Isn't every
Hello.
entertainer?
I know. It is a pleasure to be here. I watch the show. I love it. And I can't wait to share this journey with you.
Well, thank you for being on. A voice I'm sure you may not recognize the
Yeah.
the normal
The normal voice. I never
every
sound
day.
like this in anything I do.
Have you what is the closest you've done to you in all of the roles that you've done?
I would say nothing. You know,
Now, was that a choice on your part as well?
well, I think that's what I did when I was in theater, because when you're a utility guy or in the ensemble or an understudy, you're always playing a lot of parts. So I got used to doing that. And it just caught on with, well, you can play these extreme characters or these more subtle characters, but this didn't really fit. I mean, there may have been a commercial or two that that I used this, but it's always, because for me it's the, where's the character? How can I play this character that perhaps I wouldn't play on stage or on film, but I can convey that through the voice, like Emperor Valkorion that I did for Star Wars, which was great.
The
All the Star Wars roles that I got to do, and that was phenomenal. That was early on when I got to LA, and there's a story behind that. I'll tell it really quickly. I was working on the Warcraft movie, doing orc noises, and it was a killer session. It was no one from the game for Blizzard was there. It was just the movie team,
For your voice,
and
I'm sure, was a killer
they
session.
were. It was like my first big session in LA on a movie. I had done some in New York, and I was like, well, I better be good. And they're pushing, and I'm like, well, this is sort of like doing the plant in Little Shop, because I'd covered that and did the tour a long time. And I'm like, I know how to do this and sustain, because I've been on the road with 2 years. And so I did it, but I got home after that session really, really trashed. I was like, my voice is very low and gravelly. And this beautiful piece of copy came through, this beautiful monologue. But my voice was very low and here. And I just did it because they said Tywin Lannister as the example. And I read it and I'm like, that's great. And they're like, he's got to be using a processor. How is that his voice? And then you find that. And it's like, lately I keep thinking myself as I'm a musician in the orchestra. And what am I playing? They're conducting me. How does the symphony fit together? And how does this instrument fit in that piece? Does that make sense? It's kind of,
It does, but
yeah.
you play a lot of different instruments. I mean,
I play a
you have
lot
a
and I love
range.
it. I love that.
You're not just stuck over in percussion. Not just in strings. You're not just in horns.
No,
Like,
except
what
if
is the
it's
brightest voice you've done? Brightness is like, as far as because you're known for a lot of the deep, gravelly, gruff voices like a
Oh yeah,
Jonah
well
Jameson or Hulk.
there was a character on this wonderful kid show called the Stinky and Dirty Show, and it was about trucks. And I played this wonderful dump truck. Yeah. And he was up there, he was just happy all the time.
and you just get into that thing. It's like playing in those levels. And also we did in Star Wars and other games, you're like, or Warcraft and everything, we've placed the big character here. We're gonna do some side characters. Let's find a higher range.
For some goblins or something. There's a little low, but it could be high as well.
And you're just playing with levels. And I love that. And but as far as bright, as far as loud, it's Jameson. It's J. Jonah Jameson. My favorite thing to do. Uh, just going for that, and they're a wonderful team at Insomniac. But this is about Star Wars. Gosh all heck,
We got to stay on topic, right?
we
There
do.
is there is no topic.
We
You've
don't
done
want
it.
any of you leaning over to that spider guy, that threat and menace. He's
You're
an
telling
alien, I tell you, Ken.
you're
An
telling
alien.
telling me Jameson doesn't get off on side tangents on his podcast. Come
I
on.
never do. I never do. But let me tell you this story. this story that's a complete side tangent that I never really would do. I'm sorry. We had a fun there. We based him on everyone thinks it's what's that guy?
Morton Downey Jr.
Was close to that. It was someone that you wouldn't expect, an older commentator, and where I found it at first, because they all think it's one of the crazy, like, I don't know, nut jobby guys. There's
But not many
turning,
guys have that sort of smoky voice.
yeah.
There was there was a radio talk show era of smoky voices. Like this guy has 15 packs a day.
Well, we
He's
grew
smoking
up with
on
that.
air.
But that was it. That was sort of, every boss in, in stage. If you think of Ben Hecht in, oh gosh, The Front Page. A lot of it is based on The Front Page, which was a fabulous play from like the 40s or 50s. But it was all the newspaper guys, and I saw like John Lithgow and J.K. Simmons and Richard, John Boy Walton. I know, and I'm forgetting. I'm old. There was this great production that I saw.
Someone's running right now.
I know. I'm like that. I saw on Broadway, and I absolutely adored it. And all the news guys were like this, and they talk like that, and they go somewhere here, and they're and it's just like bang, 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 bang. Like Gilmore.
Well, that Howard Hawks sort of approach.
And I'm like, I love this world. So when it came around, and they were like really nice. They were pushing for me to do the role, and I was very, very, very lucky.
And you're a comic fan. You know what J. Jonah Jameson means within Spider-Man.
They were always surprised because we'd like get onto these talks about Swarm, and I'm like, well, I read him when he was first appeared in the Champions, and they're like, how do you know these? I'm like, this because I'm a big geek, and that's part of the journey that we are going to take in our Star Wars adventure.
We should get into the Star Wars adventure, but we're going to get into that by just having a general discussion about you getting into the Star Wars collecting in general, or just do you remember what the first thing was that you actively collected as a child? Like these are toys that I want more of, because you would have been you're in the mid late 70s when you're
in my age. Yes. Well, I was talking.
You look
to someone,
good. You look
good for that. I was talking to someone at a session and saying, there weren't that many. Action figures was a term created with Star Wars. G.I. Joe was a doll when I was growing up. They were,
right.
it was, and there were
in Mego, who also was licensing those things.
I had a couple of those.
There were Mego dolls.
Yeah, and I had a couple of those, but there never was anything that really, at that time, based on a film or a project that you could collect a lot of. Maybe one or two, and there was the big G.I. Joe with the scar and everything. And I think Action Man I had a bunch of, because we went to London and my dad went to Hamley's toy store and he's like, look at all these figures. They're all based on
the UK G.I. Joe.
The UK G.I. Joe. So he brought home some Action Man and I had a bunch of those.
But Action Man had incredible hair.
Yes.
Different than the G.I. Joe.
Different than G.I. Joe.
They had sort of the flocked. Action Man had like that flocked head, right?
Yes. And there was a villain at the time, the kind of Dr. Phibes sort of villain. You took off his face. That was an American G.I. Joe thing, or that I absolutely adored. But they were like Western heroes or this and that. And then when Star Wars happened, I just, I fell in love with it. When I saw it, my dad dropped my sister and I off, and we went in to the theater in Florida, because I was in Palm Beach, West Palm Beach actually, and they had a program, and we were theater kids even at that time, and it was like, a program for a movie? Well, that's kind of cool. And we went up and like, well, it's $5. And again, it was 70, so we're like, well, that's outrageous. I wouldn't pay $5 for that.
That's a whole other movie we could go see.
Yeah. We saw the film, and my dad just walked in at the end. He didn't have to pay. They're like, oh, you're picking them up? Well, sure, go right in. I'm like, this is the best thing. You've got to get that for us. You've got it. And I still to this day have that program, that $5
What condition is it in? How dog-eared is it?
Great condition.
So right from the start, you took care of things.
Yes, I never. My folks always said, you never played with your toys. You lined them up and looked at them and made stories up in your head. Which is what maybe that led me to be in voiceover or to be in acting, because it was like they were always just in groups and lined up, and I would just look at them and dream and imagine.
I mean, it certainly helps inform doing voiceover work when you're alone in a booth most of the time. You're lucky when you were able to do it with other actors at the
And that
same
is
time, but
rare to ever now. But I think I love it because it's a table read. And, if you're in the moment, like I was doing something today, and it's like you're giving choices, you're playing it from every angle. And sometimes they go, well, think of it like this. Let's hit that paragraph again. But think of it like it was a great thing. It was really a sad bit. I don't want to give anything away. And I was working it. And I'm crying in the booth. I'm like, oh God, I'm good. I'm like, I'm going for this. And they loved it, and they're loving it. Going, and the director went, do one more and hold back everything. Just tell it to us. And we're going to keep a little bit of the sadness, but then turn it off. And that's what they're using. And we heard it, and I went, oh my God, it kills you even more. There was an old theater rule that my teachers would say. They're like, if you're on stage and you're crying, the audience isn't going to cry.
well, I mean, how much? I mean, people talk about the difference between stage acting and film acting.
Yeah.
As far the camera's close, you need subtlety and nuance more than you need on the stage when you need to project to someone who is, yards and yards away from you. Do you think that's also similar when you talk about voice acting, when you're there with that microphone? You're right next to it. All that nuance and subtlety in your voice is going to be picked up by it. It's not having to, again, in a theater, project to the back row.
In certain instances, yes. I mean, depending on the project and the character and the style, there are some that you can just, you can rely on getting close up and just being. And then there are some, Reinhardt and Overwatch and some of the animation characters I do. I have a lot coming up that you're playing the room. You're doing a theater performance. We have a show that my first series regular was on Abominable and the Invisible City. We just had our second season out on Hulu. And I'm playing, the Abominable Snowman. I'm playing Everest. And it's all just creature noises. But it's acting. It's like mask work in theater. So you're going to town on it, and you can play every level because you are playing the room. And I think maybe that's from theater that helped me, is like knowing, okay, we're black box in this event, black box theater. There's only maybe 20 people watching.
Right.
So for this game, it's going to be small. Over this project, I'm playing to the back of the house. and I love that. And it's all
but you're
that
also
training.
a utility guy.
Yeah.
You talked about in the theater, and one of the underappreciated positions within the swing. Can you explain the importance of and the difficulty of being a swing within a production?
Deborah and I, my wife, have she's on Broadway now, as you know. She's in Funny Girl right now, and the swings are heroes. We've never been swings. We've been understudies in standby. And that's a tough job. A swing is an impossible job because you are following maybe 7, 8 tracks as a dancer or a chorus member. So you have to learn where everybody is that you are covering. And it's not just one person. You're covering like 5 people. So you have to know where they are at every moment, because they can throw you on at any moment, especially when we
And you have to come on seamlessly.
And with COVID, the swings were the heroes. It's like somebody tested, you're on, but I haven't rehearsed. You're on. And they do it, and you just go, it's as if, because they're working up, and they have a separate dressing room for Funny Girl up on the top floor, and they're working it during the show. They're practicing and working and
ready in the case
ready
that
to
call
go.
comes.
And and I've seen a lot of them, and they're amazing. It's just so,
and they don't show up knowing most of the time that they're going to be called up or called in.
No.
Same thing for understudies. I mean, how many times have you showed up at the theater thinking, it's just another day here with my small role in the thing. I'll do it. I have these plans. I'm thinking this through. I'm going to have a nice cup of coffee. I'm going to sit down in my dressing room for a bit, and then we'll go out and we'll do the show. And they go, hey, by the way, so-and-so's not in tonight. You're on.
Oh, it's happened. It happened a lot. Yes, it happens a lot, and you get ready. Very early in my career, I was an apprentice at the Burt Reynolds Dinner Theater. Mr. Reynolds had a theater, and he had Florida students. There were
that
6
Neptune,
men
Florida? Jupiter,
Jupiter.
Florida.
Yes.
I knew it was
Jupiter,
one.
Florida.
I knew it was
Yeah,
one of the
yeah, I
places.
said planet out there. Jupiter, Florida. It was a great theater. I met Deborah there later on because she was brought from New York to do a show when they changed to, it wasn't the dinner theater anymore. It was called the Jupiter Theater. I don't think it was the Burt Reynolds Theater anymore. But Mr. Reynolds was really wonderful to us, and it was a whole year working in theater. And you were studying with him and, Julie Harris, Vincent Gardenia, John Amos, Charles Nelson Riley was like our main teacher. So it was a lot of Uta Hagen method. And then you weren't only doing that, you were building sets. You were running, you were doing everything. One show, you're working sound. You're a sound apprentice and you're going to learn how to work sound on that show and how to hang the lights on the next one and how to fix costumes and props on the next one. And once in a while, you'd be an understudy. So when you were an understudy, you'd sit in rehearsal and watch. Or I was on props for one. It was a production of Bus Stop. And Mr. Riley was directing. And I was watching every day because I loved it. It was fascinating what they did. It was just fabulous production. Ken Curtis from Gunsmoke was in it. And he was brilliant. You just go, well, I just go out there every day and tell the truth. And I just remember that all the time. But there was a matinee the first week. And the guy playing the sheriff didn't know that and did not show up. And no one could find him because it was in Florida and he was at the beach and there were no phones at that, no cell phones. No one could find him. The understudy, who was another apprentice, hadn't been in rehearsals. He's like, I don't know any of this. And I was like, I know it. And I was ready. It was crazy. And I'm like, I can go on. I know it. The thing about that role is he comes in and then he leaves. And he comes in and he leaves. He's not on the whole time like everybody else. So I was like,
but that's also a lot of cues to hit, though. I mean,
it was. But Charles
that
Nelson
actually
Riley
for
was
me
brilliant.
would feel worse and more pressure for me to
Really?
have to know exactly when you need to come on and come off and
Sometimes
have
they'll
that
push
knowledge.
you. They're just like, you're on now, go. And that adrenaline and that, like, I can do this. I'm going to prove it to myself. And Mr. Riley said, don't worry, because if you forget, I want you to bring a newspaper on stage. And you have the script in the newspaper. And you have a pencil. So you look like you're doing a crossword puzzle to the audience. And if you ever forget, it's right there for you.
And how many times did you do that crossword puzzle?
None. I was ready to go. It was, but I went, everybody was ready going, don't worry. Don't worry. You can do this. And that's, that's voiceover. That's the creative process. It's like, don't worry. You can do this. Push yourself. What story can you tell? I'm old and I talk a lot. And we're there to talk about the Star Wars.
No,
sorry.
This is the show.
Sorry.
Okay. I hope everyone's enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. So
well, it all goes back to that. I mean, Star Wars was, the Planet of the Apes was my first thing, and there were no toys for Planet of the Apes. So I was an artist and I would draw figures and cut them out and line them up and color them and have my village of paper, paper dolls.
And who was your favorite?
Growing up, I mean, I really, really, really loved Roddy McDowall as a performer, and I loved Cornelius. But I loved drawing all of them because what you could do at that time, there, the original Planet of the Apes. So the chimpanzees looked a certain way, wore a certain thing. The orangutans looked a certain way, wore a couple of versions. The gorillas. So you're like, well, how do I change the face and make this character? What's he going to look like, and what's his position? I'm weird. But that's.
Do you still have any of these? Did any of these survive?
Yes, I have. My folks had them, and they are in New York in a folder. They're
not set up in a village right now.
No, we have very little room.
That would be beautiful to frame and do it as a mural.
I should. I didn't think of that. That's a good idea. Thank you, kid. I was really. Deb would go, we have no room, because we say, we have our place in New York, and then we're out here. And we'll probably have to move soon here because where we're renting, the owner is like, I think I may have to sell. I'm like, okay, that's life. We didn't know. I mean, it's almost been 10 years here in LA when we came thinking we'd last 6 months.
You get to take your COVID recording booth with you? Is it mobile?
Yes. Everywhere we go, there's been stuff, and there are still productions, there's a couple animation things that they want you to at home. They don't want you at a studio, which is crazy. Because I always worry. I'm like, is Source Connect going to cut out? You know, it's so much more nerves. But yeah, and I've got one next week for an animated thing. But most everything is sort of back in studios.
So you need to plan ahead. Just go ahead and get the thing framed, have it ready to go.
We got to do it. We'll put
Decide
it
how you're going to lay it out.
Well, I want to start talking figures.
Well,
Figures
so you went to you saw Star Wars in the
Yes.
theater.
Yes,
How soon after release did you see it?
pretty soon.
So you were
Pretty
already
soon.
hyped up and excited about it.
Well, yeah, because the summer before that was Jaws, and that sort of changed because you didn't really go to movies in the summer. You know, that was when everyone was out doing stuff.
Right.
And then Jaws, I was terrified of it, and even wouldn't go in pools for a while. But I adored that. Still, one of my favorite films ever is Jaws. And then the next year was Star Wars, and I was like, oh, let's go see this. And you know, it was a a very different time that it played in that theater in West Palm for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. There was one theater devoted to showing Star Wars multiple times a day.
I mean, if
And
it made money, there's no
if it
reason to
made
change it
money.
out.
Yeah, and I would go back and I'd see it again. And how do you experience it? And how do you watch every corner of every frame to see what's happening and just absorb it?
Because that
And-
also was a period where that was your only option to see it again.
Yeah, yeah. Or you'd sneak a tape recorder, not a video, just sound, so you could hear it in your mind. Or that wonderful Roscoe Lee Brown album where he narrated it. It used some of the dialogue and a lot of the sound effects. And Roscoe Lee Brown would narrate the story of Star Wars. And I'd listen to that record over and over again. Again, voiceover. It's the story that's up here. And I loved it. And then so not soon after that, but the Palm Beach Mall used to be a big place when malls were big. And it was a great hangout. You'd just go there and spend the day. And there was a Woolworth at the Palm Beach Mall. I don't even know if Woolworth exists anymore.
I don't think it does.
I don't think it does, because it's sort of a smaller version of Target, but it's basically, a drugstore with a soda fountain and then lots of stuff. And I went to Woolworth. I think my mom and my sister and my dad were off doing something else. And I turned a corner in the aisle and there was a mountain of Star Wars figures. I'm like, what is this? What? As the first time I'd seen it, fell in love and was like, I've got to get this. I don't have that much money. I've got to get at least one, which brings me to number one. My very first figure that
So is this on your list? Is this
Yes, this is the first one on the story.
okay?
This
So
is
we're
my-
going. So normally I ask for rankings from your
Yes.
fifth to your number one.
Yes.
So we were going to have a discussion about this because I
Yes.
mentioned before we started recording.
My number one is still a number one.
Okay.
And you laid it out. You were very clear. You were like, this is the way I want to do it. And I was like, yes, I understand. I'm going to tell a story. Because this wouldn't, I mean,
you are a story. Hey,
is
I'm,
my
fi-
story,
I'm
though.
fine. I'm fine. You know what? And we'll
Yeah.
say for the sake of this, it's number 5. It could be 4, 3, 2. At any time, it
well,
could
but
change.
it's where the story started. So they're all,
So this was late enough, though. So you went into this Woolworth,
Yeah.
because the figures famously were not available until 1978,
right.
the beginning of 78, post Christmas. They
Right.
famously did not have the figures ready for Christmas
Right.
during its big year. So you would have seen the film a few times by then,
Yeah.
and just the idea of figures being out because you hadn't been thinking about it. You're already through Christmas.
Yeah.
I guess your parents missed the early bird.
Well, but I mean, they would buy me some Muppet stuff for Christmas, but they didn't know that I like Star Wars. They knew I went, but they didn't know there were toys, and it wasn't something that you thought of. And when I came upon it, I'm like, how is this a thing? And I remember even going up, there was an R2 that was out of the package, that somebody had taken out of the package. And I went up and I paid for Chewbacca. And I went, well, this R2 is out of the package. Could I have him for free? No. But so this started it.
So why Chewbacca?
I don't know why I picked Chewbacca. I loved every character, but there was just something about this figure that spoke to me, and because
And is that the actual Chewbacca? Is
yeah,
that your
it was the actual Chewbacca from the '78. Because the character that spoke to me the most was C-3PO. I loved everything about it. I mean, because it was a different time, and I don't know if newer
the
kids
Roddy
understand.
McDowell of Star Wars?
Yeah, but you didn't understand that they're like, there's a robot that sounds like this, and he's gonna do that. And then when the Jawas showed up, everyone's laughing with joy, going, "What is going on? We've
Well,
never seen
well,
anything like
robots to
this."
that point had been like Robbie the Robot or
Right.
B1, had been a very mechanical computer
Lost in space.
voice.
Danger, danger, Will
Yeah,
Robinson.
it
You know,
wasn't a personality like that.
right. So it was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And but there's something about Chewbacca that I just went, I kind of am in love with this, because
See,
there was everyone
and
at
you
that
still
time
have the original
except
accessory. He still has his
yes, I have all of my stuff, all of my original Kenner, and I have every figure, some multiples, except for the yak face that you couldn't find. And I have a couple from Ewoks that I bought. Like I have a Duloc and everything. I've kept those through the years. Wherever I've gone, there I've kept them. I've lost a couple things. We'll get into that. But I still have them. They're in the New York apartment. They are all kept in, in bags and containers, and we have them in the closet, and they are not put out. There was a time before I started in voiceover, we were, as an actor, you have good times and bad times, and we were having a rough time. And I went, I think I'm gonna have to sell the figures. And Forbidden Planet was my comic shop, still is, in New York, and they're my friends. And I went there, and at that point, Star Wars figures was in between, and they had no value. And they're like, "Well, I'll give you $100." I went, I can't. This means so much to me. Let me hold on to it. And then it exploded, and it started with this, and it got so bad. Deborah will go, "Why are you saying this?" There was many times when I couldn't sleep that I would count Star Wars figures that hadn't been made yet. It's like, well, who could they make from this scene? And think about it, and then I go to sleep. And that's just a crazy little thing, but it was this passion.
who was the first
And
one you went to? Who was the one that kept coming back in those lists? You're like, why
it was
haven't they made this yet?
Tarkin. It was Tarkin. And then you'd go to you'd see the movie again and find an alien in the cantina, or an officer, that walked by, because you didn't think they'd ever make a figure of that, and then all of a sudden they were. And it just like, well, they could do that. They could do that.
So the early 2000s must have been a golden age for you to see these things on shelves.
We will get into that. But those days of just rows and rows and rows, and you'd go, this one has the best paint job. The eyes look great. It's beautifully done. This is going to be mine.
Now, on that Chewbacca, is it the straight ahead or is it the side eye Chewbacca?
See, he's straight ahead.
He's straight ahead.
He's straight ahead.
So you've
Was there a
seen the
side eye one?
there's a side eye.
I did not know that.
Some of them have distinct side eye.
I would look. I would always. I would. Just when you could find them in stores, and there were so many of them, that you just pick the right paint job, because this was what was going to be special to you for years.
Now, did
And
you save
now
the card backs as well? Are you?
No, I did for a little bit at one
Because
point.
there
but
were
then
mail
when
aways
Yeah.
also that you could do with those.
Yeah, I did for a while, and I would be very careful at taking them off. And then when you move so much, when you're an actor, and it's like, well, now I'm in New York. Well, now I'm going to go back to Florida to do this. And then I met Deb, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm moving back to New York, because I'm getting married. And you take what you have with you and try to, I know I had a Kenner Rancor for a while, and I just couldn't take it. I was like, I don't have room. And I loaned it to someone, and said, it's yours. I tend to do that. I'm a little crazy. I had collected some Marvel Legends early on when I was on tour with Little Shop, and they just were collecting dust, and the older ones, not the
Right.
new.
The Toy
And I
Biz era.
Yeah,
ones.
and I went to Forbidden Planet. Went, you want these? Take them, sell them. They're yours. You've been good to me for so many years. Even with the Playmates Star Trek, I had those, and I gave them to Forbidden Planet with all the accessories. I'm just like, here,
And they're like,
when it
he's trying to do it again. This is weird.
yeah,
What
and
is
they're the best people. And there's something about a comic shop that's home. If you find the one you like, when you go in and you see people and you talk and you just grow up or grow old with these people that love what you love. And I was like, I want to give back. They've given me so much joy.
and a good comic shop looks out for you as well.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that here's something you might like. We got this thing in. Did you know
Yeah.
this thing existed? Because
That was he passed recently, the David from Forbidden Planet. And there was early on, because he was English, he's like, look at these things. They're called Funko Pop Vinyl. Gonna be very big, Darin. You should get one. And I don't think he ever knew that now I've got several that are based on my characters. Because he had MS and he but that's his memory. There was a funeral recently. You just tell stories of these people that changed your life, because it is stories. I mean, that's why when you collect figures, it's about stories. Where did I find it? How did I find it?
why? Why
Yeah,
was I looking for it?
yeah. What does it mean to me? And I think that's what Star Wars has done to all of us. It was the first time they did that was a Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, the book. And it's like, they have names? Wow. And then you start to see, I want to see the movie again and go, well,
Or his
that's
name's
him.
not just Hammerhead? What?
Right. And that they would make a figure of a Cantina alien that at that point you're like, no, you just make the heroes. Maybe one villain. That's, and then they
Maybe not
made
even
the
all the
world.
villains. With Tarkin,
Right.
you
Not
don't
Target.
even
You're
get.
like, come on. But that they made the world. And that Star Wars you could live in that world. That it was a world you wanted to visit. And that's what spoke to me.
And particularly at that point was still open-ended.
Yes. Yes. I remember walking by and seeing Heir to the Empire in New York at like a B. Dalton's or something. Going, there's books now?
Yeah.
Because that was so, yeah.
Oh yeah, to
But
be in
it's
the early 90s and walk into a shop and go, a Star Wars book? What?
But
Like
this is number
in a
5.
prominent place as a New York Times
Yeah.
bestseller when you saw that going, wait,
Because
what?
it used to be like Star Trek or something. But this is number 5 because this started me on the journey. And it's
And you only got one that day. When you went to Woolworth, you only got one.
I only got one. And the next one I know was 3PO, and then I went on. And I think the last one that I got was Han. I just couldn't find. He sold out a lot. Han was, but yeah, this is number 5 because this started the journey. But there's more of the journey to tell.
So how do you want to set up the next part of the journey then? Because you have in mind how you want to so
Number 4.
take me on the journey.
Number 4 is the next step, and also this is like my 4th one that I would go. This means a lot to me, because it's always about where you are in your life, and where figures find you. Those of us that it brings us joy, and it's our passion. I was moving to New York. I was a Florida actor. I'd graduated from Burt's, and I was moving to New York to live by myself for the first time. And I was like, I joined Equity. I was ready. And, I had my figures I kept with me because that was my thing. Landed at JFK and was on my way out. And I'm like, I'm going to pick up a candy or something. I walked into one of the stores. And Return of the Jedi had not come out yet. I think it may even have been called Revenge of the, it was not out. And there was a figure, a Star Wars figure, for sale there. And I went, who is he? What's his story? This is my first, step on being in New York, being an adult, being on my own.
That's not
And
vinyl.
no, and then it was like, there's a cloth cape? What? So it was Tessek, or Squidhead, as he was known at that time. And it was the next evolution of, this is wonderful. This is everything, simplistic and joyful, but there's cloth? We're evolving in what we can do. And I just thought of the possibilities of who he was and what would happen. Now
Yeah,
we
because you had
know
zero context at that point.
zero context.
Oh, you
Nothing.
see a picture of the character on the package.
Yeah. And called Squidhead.
You see other figures on the back. That was the beauty of those original card backs
Yes.
too, is
'Cause
you could see that lineup,
I would like go
including
back to the
because it
airport.
also had, when you would have picked it up, would have
Yeah.
had some of those still marked out, blurred out in sort of like the secretive, blacked out card backs that they would
Yeah.
do for
And
figures that
I couldn't find them in New York. I would go to the department stores, comic shops. There were no figures yet. So I would go back to the airport to see, and I picked up a couple more because but I'm like taking,
so they fell off a truck at the
at the
runway.
airport. And that is this one. This
What
this
was
wonderful
it like
thing.
was it the newsstand? Was it like a little kiosk?
Yeah, it was
with-
one of the, it was a bigger one. Right there. I remember,
Did they have other toys?
yeah. Again, a different time. It was
Right.
like you'd pick up toys and souvenirs and this. Well, no, airports have
But
that.
also JFK,
Yeah, JFK
it's
is
a
pretty
major
big.
hub in a
Yeah.
major metropolitan area,
Yeah.
so it's a little different than
And
a
it
local
was in a
airport.
place where, at that point you didn't go through security and everything, but it was in the front area.
It's when you come back from a business trip and you didn't get anything for your kids yet, and
Yes. Yes. We were just in Italy and we're like, well, we need to pick up some things for people. Well, here's the duty free. I guess that's the easiest thing. And it was sort of that. It's like, well, so that became was the next part of the story. And also number 4, because it was progressing just the way a figure looked. And again, I would line it up and think of, well, who is he? What are we going to learn about him?
so how many figures did you wind up going back and getting at the airport?
They had
Also,
big
this is a
Fortuna.
different age for the airport. We should tell
Yeah.
anyone who's on the younger side that
Yeah, you could
you
just go
could
to the
just
airport.
show up at the airport.
Yeah.
You could have lunches at the airport. You
Yeah.
could meet folks in transit at the airport.
Yeah, there were restaurants, there was everything. People knew you. They'd say
People would
Norm.
say,
That
"I got
did not
an
happen.
hour layover. Want to meet me at
Yeah.
the airport and we'll have lunch?"
Yeah. So I remember I picked up a bib Fortuna that I still have, and Reese, who I think had a name. My God, I went. You
He
said
was
what was the brightest character? Was like, he had a name. That was the brightest character. So Reese, yes, had a name, and I was like, well, there's Squidhead and bib Fortuna and Reese. So those were the ones I got at the airport.
so three Jabba denizens.
Yes, and it was, and then going to see that at the Ziegfeld, seeing Return of the Jedi for the first time at the Ziegfeld, biggest screen at that time, in the city, and falling in love
That's
with
sort
it.
of got to feel like you've arrived as well. You're seeing a major motion picture in the biggest city in the world.
Well, and going and waiting in line, and yeah, and meeting friends, going, well, let's go see Star Wars.
Do you remember your line experience for Return of the Jedi?
I think I went early on when there wasn't one. I'm like, well, I'm going to go at a time where there isn't one. I know that when they re-released them, I met some friends and we all waited in line to see the re-releases.
In '97.
And we'd go to the next one and the next one, and we would have dinner and just discuss Star Wars and have the greatest time. and it was great because then it was, I was, Deb and I were married, and the other two, I don't know if the other two were married yet, but so it was like 3 couples that would sit and discuss Star Wars and life and theater, and how theater is life and how Star Wars is life. But that's number 4, because again,
And we'll call him Squidhead. We're not going to go
Squidhead.
for Tessic. Tessic was
not
later.
Tessic yet, not Tessic, but that's number 4. And just, I love, the sculpting evolved on it, and the soft goods, and I just went, this is amazing.
Now, were there
Yeah.
any other lines you were collecting at that time? Anything
No.
else that? So it
No,
was
just
Star Wars was the focus.
Star Wars was, yeah, I would just haunt stores. And I remember going to the Forbidden Planet in the old location, and just going, I wonder if I'll ever meet a girl that likes Star Wars, because I'd look for figures and just kind of be that lonely guy going, oh, look at that.
Well, I guess I could drive back out to the airport again.
Yeah. Oh, you're super fun.
But yeah, it was just, it's been so much of my life.
I mean, outside of obviously Yak Face, which was an international release,
Right, I didn't.
Did you have, by the time the line ended, a full collection? Had you been
Yes.
buying them all and going back? Because that's the other thing people, may not appreciate now as well, is that you could walk into that store and you could get characters from Star Wars, from A New Hope, still on pegs, just in updating packaging, but they're still available. They're still on the racks. You could still buy, a Tusken Raider, a Sand Person, as they were called. That you could still buy a Jawa. You could still
Yeah.
buy all of these ones from 2 films ago when you came out of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and that and I would army build before it was called army build. It's like, well, I can't just have one stormtrooper. Well, I can't just have one. Was it Death Squad commander, who now is the Imperial Navy commander? So, well, I can't just have one. You got to have a couple, right?
So you were already building dioramas.
Yeah.
Now, did you expand it? Were you also a vehicle person at that time? Were you getting vehicles
I
and
got a
playsets?
couple. It was one that I did lose in a move. There was one that was a vehicle, and also it was a container for them. It was from
It was the Rebel troop transport?
yeah, the Rebel troop transport. It's like first transport away.
The big Zeppelin looking.
Yeah, I had that, and I put some figures in that, and I would have it, and you'd set up. There would be a room in the closet on a ledge, and I'd put that and have figures around it, so that when I opened, I'd look at that. That was my view in New York when I was single and alone. Wonder why I was. But yeah, and then there was a move, I think, and I couldn't put it in boxes. I couldn't do anything. When you're a young actor, you just don't have money or room, and you're like, I look.
Particularly if you were going out on the road quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it could be in between residences while you're on the road. He's like, well, I don't need to maintain an apartment if I'm going to be out for 6 months doing this show.
Yeah. But, and then when the newer movies came on, I was doing, it was a tour of Funny Girl. Deb and I were both on that in the rare time that we got to work together with Debbie Gibson, or Deborah Gibson, as she was known at that time, playing Fanny Bryce. And I was buying at the airport, because magazines were there, and it's like, here's stuff about, the next Star Wars movie that's gonna come out. And I just devour it and going, well, I'm on the road, so I'll hit the stores in that, in that town and see what they have. So yeah, when it was Phantom Menace, I would be in certain, on tour.
That was a flood of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And I was in New York for that first day when it was like the midnight release of Phantom Menace, and like the first time that we're gonna have new Star Wars figures. And I lined up for that. And I'm there and I'm ready. And we waited.
At the Toys R Us?
Yeah. At the
Was
big
it the one in Union Square?
Not at Union. There was one, because we're down in yes, Union Square. Yes,
Yeah.
Sorry, not the big flagship one.
Yeah, the one directly across from my dorm.
Oh yeah, you know the one.
Union Square West.
Maybe we were there the same night. Because I got pushed into a pillar. People were running.
I was not there.
I
was there from 95 to 96 at NYU.
Were you there?
In fact, they finished building the Barnes and Noble as I left New York.
Yeah, that was my one. And I'd go up and look on the third floor. And, there was a section of Star Wars with just racks and racks and racks and racks.
Yeah, when I was there, it would have been the Power of the Force 2 stuff was just hitting. At that Toys R Us. I remember that Toys R Us was what? Was it 3 levels or 2 levels? I remember an escalator.
3. And they were always broken. And Star Wars was on 3.
You had to work for it.
Yeah, you did. And they changed the section, and you'd go and you'll see how it was laid out. And it was just a different time and a very exciting time, which brings us to number 3.
Oh, good. Well, see how we work this? It's almost like it was a natural transition.
That's what I was like, I'm going to tell the story and it's going to work. Because again, it's an evolution. Because these are all, the 3 3/4 size. That's my thing. I've never collected the 6-inch Star Wars. It's all
never been tempted.
Yes, but I know that once I start, it's not going to be good. I'm going to have to. So there's 2 parts to this story, because this is number 3. Notice it's Effant Mon. He's kind of getting caught in the light. And it was rare. This was a rare figure.
That was a fan's choice figure.
Yes. With Hermie Odell.
So this
And
was around 2002,
maybe,
and he's a
but
brick.
yeah, he's phenomenal. And you'd only see like one on the rack, and I managed to get him. And I love, again, we see an evolution in figure. It's a background character, but there's so much personality. And I'm sorry, the light is bad, but the sculpting
I
on
mean,
him,
the paint job for
yeah,
that era is incredible.
yes. I mean, the articulation is very simple. He can
But what are
close
you
his
going to
mouth and
get out of Ifant Mon? Honestly,
I went, I love that they made this and that I have this, and that it continued the story and going again, and that he's like Jabba's head of security, and then you go, oh, this is so cool, it's so cool. But
rather poor head of security, we should note. Did not
yes,
his final
I
report
swear,
not good.
getting back on voiceover, I swear, because a lot of the things that I do, the low voice thing, because you hear I don't really have it, but when you practice going solo, you're like, oh, go to like a tonky got droid, and you're like playing the back of your throat and trying to be Jabba and be like, Gawa Wookie, and you're like, oh, that's so cool, and going, well, how do I work that, and so it all comes around to that. But
Now, something like that, when you look at Ifant Mon,
yes,
that's a background character. We barely see him in the film.
Yeah.
So that is a blank slate as far as that perform. If you were to look at Ifant Mon, which you have for decades now,
yes,
what personality, what voice do you see? If someone said, you know what, we need an Ifant Mon, what's your take on Ifant Mon?
it would be, I've been very lucky to be in a bunch of Star Wars stuff and a bunch of Star Wars games, and I got to do, they like when I do Huttese, because they'll spell it out and I just like know it. So it would be in Huttese, and if they had it, because they're like, you're really good, and I'm like, well, it's the language. So he would speak Huttese and be like, it would be another big one, but it's like ponderous and
So now what if I were to say, make it Brooklyn Huttese?
Oh, Jabba no bala. Dudo, Ikentawe, Ikatatumpi. Gotta go by.
Then you realize he hasn't been talking Huttese the entire time. He has no
talking Huttese? What is this?
I'm just
Don't be
making random
Huttese me,
noises.
pal. You
He
Huttese
hired
me.
me.
You're gonna force 5 right up the side of your head, pally. It's
Oh,
my force 5.
Look at that club he's got. Now he's
Oh yeah, and he has a little. There was also a I think I left it at home. There's a little spear that he had, or a little axe in it.
yeah. I have the Ifant Mon, and that
Yes.
thing again is like a brick. I don't have the Hermiodal, which is again an incredible character and design.
I almost brought the Hermiodal because he has soft goods, and I'm like, just something about Ifant Mon that I just love the design, because it's that halfway between realistic and Muppet and creature, and just
That's when you could tell the creature shop was going to town, when ILM was like, let's just have fun and let's just we got like 17 dozen of these different aliens we need to make for this 10-minute scene.
Well, it's the best gig in the world to go, well, what's coming out of here? And someone says, well, like again, we said, or with voiceover, it's just someone going, that's really cool, but what if you take away the emotion? Or it's like, let's make his snout longer. What does that do? Like, there it is. There's the character.
Let's give him a club.
Yeah. Well, it's like that wonderful being part of a team, being part of the orchestra that creates that symphony. It's like, well, what does I'm sculpting this before he was even a figure. It's like, what could it be?
Yeah,
I love that.
He should
It's
have
a
some
whole
hair,
world of
right?
this.
We should give him some hair.
Yeah. Can they see that? It's got that stringy hair here. And you're like, this is the best. This is amazing. And I should have done when he talks.
And to have that
Hey,
articulation.
Ken, howdy do. What's happening? And welcome to the show,
That's
kids.
my canon Ifant Mon. That is now my canon Ifant Mon.
Oh, don't shoot me out of it, Canon Ken.
And I'm Hermiodal.
Hermiodal.
Hermiodal, Jabba's Yodel. Hey, everybody, dinner time.
Lofty neck, probably a little better than Jedi Rocks. Is that controversial? I won't say anything.
One is certainly an easier entry point for an average audience member who is just like, this is a toe tapper. Lopty Neck, I think, is a more authentic
That was the one, but that was,
alien music performance, but also I don't know how much of that is just tied to nostalgia of that was my song, that was my
when they were
hit.
when the cantina happened, and they're like, oh, that's weird, different kind of music. Oh, they're aliens playing it, and you're like, what? Or like the little mouse droid, and you're like, that's a thing in this scary place, this little bit of humor. This is amazing. I just remember seeing it the first time and going, this is a world of yes. Anything can happen. It's not Flash Gordon. It's not Star Trek. They're breaking the rules. And I love this.
And they're having fun. Yeah, it's just you could feel the fun of those
But
films.
fun does have to come to an end at some point, doesn't it?
It does.
So this also, number 3, was the last one for a long time.
Real quick note on that, though,
Yes.
is that what's remarkable about that is that that was the same price as the figure beside it on the shelf.
Right.
That would have been 1/10 its size. That was sold as the same figure price. It
Right.
wasn't a deluxe figure. It wasn't $15. It was the same. I think at that point the figures were maybe $7.99.
Yeah, make $5, $6. Yeah, it wasn't that much. And you consider what you get, and again,
It's
that
so
he's
heavy.
massive.
It's so heavy.
Right. And but then I just stopped collecting. And that was the last one for a long time.
So why? Why? What?
Being in a New York apartment, being on the road, I just stopped collecting.
I
don't
can't
know
keep
why.
adding to this.
I
I
can't
have
keep
what I
adding. Yeah.
have.
Yeah. And I had crates and under the bed and here. And because I would, I remember we were doing a production of Guys and Dolls in Vegas, and it's like, oh, there's an FAO Schwartz way outside of town, but they have figures. Let's go. And Deb's like, why am I married to you? But then another, my friend Brian Maffett, who now works, he works with Stephen Colbert. There was an Imperial Walker in that Vegas Toys R Us, or Vegas FAO Schwartz, a almost life-size Walker. And he bought it for his office. Like this guy I knew in New York who was an animator. He's one of the guys behind My Cartoon President.
Does he still have it?
No, he got rid of it too. But I remember going into his office and be like, is that from Vegas? Like, yeah, I bought it. I'm like, no, wait a second. You don't understand. But it's that thing of collecting, that joy of, you have that. That's yours. You look up and go, that brings me joy.
So during that period when you've reached a saturation point,
yeah,
and you physically can't get any more because Deb's going, I have to have place for stuff too.
Yeah. We would joke sometimes like, don't worry, honey. It's going to be fine. It'll just go on your side of the bed. And she's like, no.
And then it did. So, but you're still walking into stores to get other things. You're still seeing the new stuff that's coming out. Well, that was still an age where a ton of these figures, particularly the obscure characters that you love, that was like the golden age of obscure characters finally getting made.
I remember seeing the comic book sets with an Amanin with an Imperial officer in one of them. And I was like, if I was collecting, I would love that. I didn't buy it. And I don't think I've ever seen it again. I mean, you can see it on eBay and stuff, but I just remember seeing it in a store. Going, that's really cool. I'm not collecting anymore. Because I have to give myself boundaries because I will go nuts. And it was like, well, I'm not doing this. I was doing a lot of tours. Also in between jobs, as I was mainly doing theater. I hadn't started voiceover yet. And you're like, I can't spend on this. We're having some good years, we're having some bad years. I have to, I'm married. I got to be conscious of Deb and taking care of him and helping my parents out when my parents got ill. And it was a whole thing. And I just went, well, this does bring me joy. It breaks my heart. but I'm gonna have to put it down for a while.
And this is also how I get to save and retain the stuff that I've already got.
Yeah. And I tell you, Ken, I've lost a lot. We would put stuff in storage when we came out here, and I had all the ones from, from the prequel trilogy. They're gone. I don't know what happened to them. Like,
but not your core figures.
Not my core figures. I have two big containers in New York, but I was looking when I went back recently. I was like, well, I'm doing a lot of collecting now. It was before the pandemic. I'm like, where is everything? We lost them. It was like we must have lost a box or two in storage of figures, just not found them or something. So it broke my heart. It's like I lost a lot.
Is there anything that sticks out? Is like if there's
Oh,
one thing you would,
yes.
if you could tomorrow walk into a store and get that thing again?
There was it was from Phantom Menace. They had a 3-pack with Watto and a big alien and then one of the Twi'leks.
I think it was Watto's box.
Yes.
Playset.
Yes. And the big alien was gorgeous and was really great. And I'm like, and it's gone. And I thought I had it. And I'm like, what happened to it? Like, box is just gone. And so I wish that the mystery of that. But then I go, well, and that brings me to number 4. Because, I wish I had done it. And I reached a point. We moved here in 2013. We did our little, on Bastille Day of 2013, we became bi-coastal. And we were doing anything. I just started. Nobody really knew me in voiceover. I had done a lot of stuff. I did a big Geico campaign in New York that thankfully gave us some money, and that ran for like 8 years. They kept bringing me back for that. I'm like, well, thank God I have Geico. It's like, I'm only working 1 day a year, but thank God I have this campaign. And I remember I got in this game called Skylanders, and I had to fly out to LA to do it because I was a New York actor. I'm like, well, I got to fly myself. I'm going to spend more doing the gig, getting to the gig than doing the gig, but it's what I want to do. It's my first video game. And that kind of started it. And people were like, well, you should think of moving here. So we moved, and we did an apartment swap with a friend of Deb's who's doing a Broadway show. And that's when we put stuff in storage and just, lost some stuff. And I was doing what I could. Deb was doing what she could. We'd get some acting jobs once in a while. And Deborah got a temp gig on the Disney studio lot in like the legal department. And the Disney studio store, I would go in, and that lot is phenomenal. I just love it. It's so pretty. And I'd visit her, and we'd have lunch, and you have Walt's Chili, and you just think of the history. And I'd look at the store. I'm like, oh my, they sell Star Wars figures. I think it was Black Series, smaller ones at that
Had just been introduced.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right, I'm not collecting. If I go down that road, it's not going to be happy. I'll become, I'll get back into it again. And I guess there was, things were kind of rough, and we weren't having a lot of success at one point. And Deborah came home with this for me. Brock Starsher. And she's like, I know things have, it's been hard because we're just starting out here. This is number 4. We're just starting out here in LA. But I know this brings you joy, so I picked this up for you. Even though she's the one going, you can't collect anymore. You can't. It's too much. And, the love of my life. I'm so lucky. And it may not seem like an important character to many, but it means, so much to me that, number one, that this character is made, that he was on. He's one of Jabba's goons and everything.
Another Jabba's denizen.
Another Jabba. I'm like, oh my God. And again, I was like, it really is good. The articulation's amazing. Everything's really good. You're going to start me collecting again, aren't you, Brock Starsher? Yes, I am, Kiko Tatawe. And yep, he did.
How long after you received that were you like, I'm getting another one?
I think there was a reuse there, the new sculpt of reuse that they're now reissuing in the 4-pack.
Right, that would have been in the did they do it
in a Black
in
Series?
the?
They did it in the
in the playset.
Yeah, in the
as
playset,
well.
but then they had him in a Black Series, and I was like, oh, Reese, I was like, I saw him in in an airport. Let me pick that up. But that's it, honey. Don't worry, I'm stopping there. And for a while I did. I had those two figures, and they'd be up on a little shelf, and I'm like, that's my Star Wars thing, and that's it. And then Force Awakens came out, and I was like, this is so great. Star Wars is back, and I'm having the feel, and I'm loving it. Oh, there's figures. I'm going to do that again. And I started collecting. And Deb was doing a show out of town, and I'd go, I'm going to head to let me go to Walmart, or because I think Toys R Us was still gone at that point. And I started collecting, but not like I did, where I've got to have everything. I've got to do everything. I would collect stuff that meant something, a figure that really meant something. And then when the pandemic hit, it just, there was nothing. You helped us so much. I don't know. It was amazing. We had game nights. I don't know if our audience knows that, but just Ken knows the best people. Ken knows the best people, and we would have trivia nights, and it was a monthly bit of joy during a very dark time for everybody, and it was just something that meant the world to Deb and me. And because you're like, what do I do? I'm just sitting and looking at things, and are we ever going to be able to be with our friends and be with the people that mean so much to us again, or do what we're going to do? Is that ever going to be part of our life again, that we get to share, just talking about figures, or talking about life, or talking about how figures are life, and it happened, and we did. But I started just going on Amazon and ordering some of the newer ones, and going, is it okay, Deb, if I do this? And she's like, well, it brings you joy, and there's nothing going on. And then it happened, and I'm like, I'm back. I am back. I am back, baby.
Now, have you stayed before you reveal that? Just a quick question.
Yes.
When you were back into it,
yes.
Were you only looking at the current stuff, or were you back feeling like, well, now eBay, I can go some of the stuff that came out during that dark period when I wasn't collecting, maybe I'll go back and pick up?
There was only one, Nine Num, that I went and got. Everything else, I'm like, you'll go down a very dark hole if this happens.
I don't know what you're
Just
talking
go what's
about.
out there. Just go what's out there. And again, it's like, well, how do you build your world? That's what I liked about collecting. It's like, well, who goes over here? How does this scene play out? Even if they're just standing, yes, you can buy one figure from Andor, and all of a sudden he's in the cantina, because that's Star Wars. That's the story we're telling. I know I listen to some of the collecting podcasts, like, we need more. I'm like, yeah, we all want a million more figures, but this is what we have. How do we find the joy in going, well, there's a couple great figures from the Obi-Wan show. They become part of this part of the world, or they become part, what stories do you tell with your collection with them? That's the way I look at it. I love it. It just does something for me. Just be able to look at it and go, it's my little part of the world I get to visit. And this brings my number one figure. And again, this is my number one figure. There's a couple runners up, but I think this is my number one figure. And it's Queel, because it's an alien. He had a beautiful story. I loved the voice. Nick Nolte was amazing, again, as a voiceover performance. Is it Misty Rojas?
Yes.
Who is the creature performer? Brilliant performance. The sculpting on this figure, I'm so sorry with the lighting. The expression that they captured, the articulation, to go from this. What you got? You got stuff?
Let me see if I can reach.
Oh, you got lots of good stuff.
Look.
Oh, you got a grabber.
I started doing that because I thought, oh, if someone mentioned something on the thing of the show, that way I don't have. Look at that.
Yay.
In fact, I came prepared this time, because this camera does not do good focus on. Look at this.
Oh, that's him. It's glorious. And to go from the story, from this, simplistic and yet all about imagination. To this, it's what was on screen, and it's a little piece of artwork. It's absolutely glorious. And the stories that you tell with those.
I mean, there's no better statement of just life and career for you than I have spoken, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as far as a catchphrase goes, if you're gonna choose,
Oh, this is the way he'd do that. You know, he's all gravelly in there that Nick Nolte would do. I just loved it. I have spoken. You know, and you're just like, oh, what notes, what is he playing? And there's the combination of the sculpting, Misty's work, his work. It was this alchemy that was everything that Star Wars is. A beautiful character, telling a great story. A classic kind of theater character, maybe, you know, it's this one that you always have in the journey. And that's what Star Wars is. It's like, how do we take these old stories, make them new, and add our little bit of magic to it? And it was like, it just all came together for me. I value this figure. I think it's I have two of them.
and
I,
what the
I
Mandalorian was really good at with these couple of seasons is sort of reframing these alien species that we had encountered before.
Yeah.
Like with the Tusken Raiders and
I
the
have that
Jawas.
4-pack on order. I have it on order.
You have that Target exclusive? Are you getting that massive too?
Yes, and the single one,
Yeah.
because I order from Entertainment Earth, and I'm like, well, I'll get the box, but no, I gotta get the massive because I have the original massive that they have that doesn't have much articulation. I'm like,
Right.
oh, but this one's cool too. That one made, I don't know, I found it and I'm like, oh, I have it. It didn't get lost because a lot of my Tuscans got lost, and I'm just like, I want all of this. You know, I've got the it's Boba Fett's throne room on order. That's going to be coming up very soon, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have no room for it. I have no room for it.
Did you see that they said that is started to arrive in the US now?
Yes, I did. Do I look at yak face on a daily
before
basis?
it was supposed to? Come on, Hasbro, please just
I know.
give us accurate dates. I'm fine with a wait. Just don't have everything come at once.
And yet I'm a kid of everything came at once. You know, and it sort of brings me back to those days. And I'm lucky that, knock on everything, the career has been okay. Because yeah, if I was back to the day of I have to stop, I can't have these anymore, I couldn't. And now I'm like, this is my thing. This is my little bit of joy. I don't do much anything else. I don't really drink or do anything else. So I'm like, this is my thing. And that's where I'm going to put money that I, you know, because I got the Razor Crest. I'm not going to get the N1. I'm not going to buy the N1.
Really?
Yeah.
Would you? Do you regret not getting the sail barge?
Yes. I was not back yet. And now I'm like, oh, I covet that. That's again,
particularly since you have just so many Jabba's denizens. That's like your
you
thing.
Don't want to know over there what's lurking over there in my Jabba's denizens, my little collection. Because I break them up into groups. I have, you know, you got the rebels, you got the Imperials. Now we have Mandalorians, and then there's the
so do you have a Jabba?
I do at home. I have one from Power of the Force, I think, and then I have my original Kenner one.
Okay, so you don't have the one for
that came
the
with it.
Modern one, which
Yeah,
we
I'm
only
hoping
could
they
have gotten
release it.
either with that Rancor,
right,
Black Series, or with the sail barge.
Yeah,
which
I'm
is
hoping they
ridiculous to
re-release
think
it.
that we don't have a modern Jabba available in that scale, and I haven't since like not even the one before that wasn't a wide release. That Walmart one that everyone complains is all sticky with whatever paint and rubber that they used on that thing.
Well, I have the one that you can twist its head off. I guess because there were a couple that they're like, well,
was that the Jabba Glob one?
I think, but I never
had
did
like the slime canister that you could.
You can have him drool.
Yeah,
have fun, kids. Your parents will love you.
I said I ordered
now comes
today
with drool.
The episode one that spits the frogs at the gong to start the race. Only because of two in jokes for it. Well, one it's Easter egg, one's an in joke. The Easter egg part of it is it comes with a Foden bead, who are the announcers for the pod race, but it's based on the Foden bead when they were still makeup characters
Mhm.
in the film that was cut and then later made CG, and they redesigned them. Those figures were released later in the Power of the Jedi.
Yeah, I have
Wow.
that one.
So that's the Easter egg.
I have a
The-
Greg Proops action figure.
The joke of it is an Andor reference to wonderful Diego Luna, whose only wish in the world is to touch Jabba.
Yeah.
It's just to touch Jabba. He just wants to touch Jabba's skin. He wants to feel Jabba's skin because that was an era for Hasbro when they would release the creatures, which they considered Jabba of. It had real feel skin that is advertised on the packaging for that Jabba. So
Do you keep the packaging? Do you
I
or
do.
you? Yeah, you.
I keep card backs. I don't keep like the plastic bubbles off the figures
Mhm.
when I open them, but I do. I carefully take them off just to
Yeah.
preserve as much of the artwork as possible. I tried for the longest time. Well, I was always an opener, and then I talked to I know you've met Joseph Scrimshaw,
Yes, wonderful. Man.
amazing podcaster,
Yeah.
Zen Jedi therapist, the most level-headed person within Star Wars fandom. Go check out Force Center if you haven't watched it.
I do. I listen on a regular basis. I also love
Yes,
Star Wars Explained because you introduced me
the
to them,
wonderful
and I think
Alex
they're
and Molly.
amazing. Alex and Molly Damon. I love it
Uh,
because that was through We Got This. They were on We Got This, my favorite
yes,
podcast
for
ever.
Star Wars Day
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
Last year. Oh,
And I went, I love these people, and I started watching, going, I adore these people now.
yeah.
They're
Oh, this.
amazing.
So Joseph, if you go back and watch the Force 5, if you haven't seen that yet, Joseph talks about Joseph doesn't open. Famously, he does a not unboxing series of videos.
Yes, I've seen. Yeah.
Where he does not open his figures, and so he has this whole thing about them being moments in time and artwork in and of themselves, these art pieces with them packaged. And so I listened to him and understand where he was coming from, and I tried to not open them, but I was just getting so much during the pandemic and like backfilling and getting all these lots and working with my comic shop, and I cleaned out my large portion of the attic, so I had all this trade at the comic shop, and I just wiped out their Star Wars collection. Too much. It was too much. So I started the other show that's on this channel because I was like, I need to open these, but let's make it so it's not just me sitting here quietly, watching TV or listening to music. Opening these, let's have a conversation. So that's what the open chat series is I'll have a guest on while I open Star Wars figures. They're welcome to open stuff as well.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's me plowing through, and we have a conversation about whatever or the figures I'm opening, and it's just me carefully trying to open the figures during it. So and I've done a couple of solo ones, but
I loved Paul Sun-Hyung Lee on Force 5, and Bobby Moynihan was a phenomenal episode.
Bobby's collection. Oh,
I know. I met him very very briefly once in the before times, going into a studio as he was coming out, and someone was very nice to introduce him to me, and I think I said, "You're very good," and I like blah, 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 blah. A phenomenal performer.
But he's in improv, so he'll just roll with it.
He was the greatest guy. We're very lucky in our little community to have very, very kind, talented
Hal Lublin.
Hal Lublin and Mark Gagliardi.
Mark doesn't have any Star Wars figures, though. He hasn't gone down that path.
And yet, last year at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, who did I hang out with?
The irony of irony.
Yeah, we were walking, and we had masks on, and I was there visiting EA, the BioWare, the Star Wars team.
And Mark was wearing his Starfleet uniform.
What? Well, he wanted to see stuff about the Star Cruiser, so we walked over in there, and then we just sat and talked and walked all around. And it was the most time I've spent, alone with Mark discussing life and everything. And I'm just, because I've met him very briefly.
And you
we
also
talked.
share a Disney performer history.
Yes. And it was just heaven. I'm like, we just have a good little group of friends that are the best people. And again, We Got This is an amazing podcast that Deb and I would take a little drive and during pandemic and listen. And it was like we're sharing time with our friends, and we just loved it. That's what that's what collecting does. That's what these communities do. That's what gaming does. I mean, just the people that I've met who are writers and directors and developers and designers, they do jaw-dropping work, and I get to to talk to them about it and go, how does this happen? I was one quick thing, and then I have two runners up. I'll be quick. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm very old and I talk.
Who are you telling you're going to be quick?
I know.
You've done a bit of a chat.
I
You
know.
know how these things go. You've seen this show.
I was doing performance capture for Halo Infinite, and they brought me out to Seattle multiple times to work on it. And they brought me in the office and showed me the designers working on the game. And one of the developers said something that I will always remember. I was going, this looks beautiful. And he's like, it does now, but we are always fighting time and technology. And I went, that's gaming. It's like, this is going to look great. Oh, there's a PS17? Ain't gonna work out. We got to start from the bottom, and it's crazy.
But figures are the same way. I mean, you hold up that Chewbacca and hold up that quill.
As we said, to go from this, the sculpting that we're like, this is gorgeous. This is an exact representation. And Chewbacca.
And that quill.
Mr. Paul F. Tompkins say the other day, Chewbacca the Wookiee. And then go to this and just, well, look, we're such fans that the first time I brought Deb to Galaxy's Edge, I was lucky enough to go early, and I brought Deb, and she like cried. She walked around the corner and saw the Millennium Falcon. I was like, oh. And it was the same reaction. We were just in Rome and Florence for our anniversary, and we were at the museum, the Academy. I can't remember the name. I'm old, I forget. But it's where the Michelangelo's David is. But it's right there. You walk around a corner and there's David. And Deb was like, oh my God. And I was like, the same reaction you had to seeing the Millennium Falcon. My wife loves things and enjoys things. And that brings me great joy. I tend to enjoy it quietly. Again, set them up and look at them and make a story. And I married someone who takes joy in life. And that brings me out of my shell. And that would go, we can't have another collection, but guess what? Here, you love this. Is he a big character? Is he the star of a show?
Is he a good guy or a bad guy?
I'm going to talk about two runners up really, really quick. Early on, when I was at Geek and Sundry, there was another channel that there was a Star Wars role-playing game that I was on a couple episodes on. I started, and they were like, well, what kind of character do you want to be? I'm like, a droid. And they're like, well, no one plays droids in Star Wars. You don't want to play that. And I remembered this figure, the CZ, and I created a character based on that. And I had the best time ever. And because this droid looked so weird, and that they made one, and he just kind of walked by. And now that there's so many in like the Mandalorian and everything, they're like, oh, there's a CC unit. So I loved that there's that figure. And the last one I'll show, because it's what we can do in our crazy world, is this one. Well, where does he come from? I made it because you're like, well, I had multiple of the Obi-Wan on order, and I got a couple extra of the Cantina Band because I got the whole Cantina Band that they just had.
Oh, like, that's a whole other issue. How many members?
There's 7.
There's a 5-piece and there's a 7-piece and there's a.
I loved, but they had the extra because I had already bought the singles, and I'm like, well, I wonder if I could take the head off, put that on. I wonder if the hands would come off, and they do. And I'm like, okay, I have this extra pouch. That's the guy. We're gonna put him in the Cantina.
Have you named him?
Not yet. Well, it could be Barquin Dan, but he was from Return of the Jedi. That was the guy who was playing in Jabba's band for Jedi Rocks.
Right.
And I was like, it could be him, but
he should be named after you, right? Darkwing Dan.
Yeah, Darkwing Dan. That's like Darkwing Dan. I would love to play a Bith. Well, I was in the Tales of Galaxy's Edge. I played an Arconon. The kind of alien, the first alien you see in the cantina who pops up and does
Right.
that. They based it on that, and it was in an
You saw the sort of
episode.
the triangular head.
Yeah, it was an episode with IG-88. You played as IG-88, and Reese Darby was the voice of IG-88.
Of course.
And speaking of, and I was saying they wanted this kind of gangster guy. It was Boggs Triff. So he was a Kona, but he was a crime boss. I'm going to stop your heart from ticking. Tick, tick, tick. And it was really cool. But they wrote, and they're like, and we would go on, they're like, do you want to riff a little? Because you seem to know Star Wars. It was like,
and you're like,
I'm gonna crush
no,
you like a hubba gourd, and they're like, "Oh!" It was working with Lucasfilm, and it was so great. And he's a canon character, and like this journey again, from that to all of it. It's been so much of my life. It's brought me so much joy in my life that it just means the world. It is something that is always going to be part of me. Always was part of me. I'm glad I had it, and I get to work in this world, and it means a lot. I hope that people, I know collectors sometimes get upset. Like, well, it wasn't.
No.
The boots weren't screen accurate on the Andor's thing.
Listen, I know we got this figure, but the articulation could be better.
I'm like, yeah, could. But you know what? It's probably great. Yeah, I'd love it. I always wanted that original Tarkin. And they made one updated, and I didn't get it. Because I was like, well, I'm done with retro. They're retro.
But now they got that new officer sculpt, so.
Oh, I got him. Admiral Piet's over there. He was going to be part of it. Yes, I do. I bought the box from
and your Gergerod's already on order?
Yes, and there too. So I was like, well, maybe there's a head that I can pop off and pop on, and the cap is removable. I can make another officer. And because you saw I sent you the picture. Like, don't spoil it. And I sent you a picture of like Vader and the Inquisitors and everybody like lined up as they're marching in, and that's my display because I can look at it and live in that world, because it's a world that we love to visit. It's a world where anything can happen. It's a world where we can be the hero, or we can be a scoundrel, or we can be the good guys and the bad guys.
Do you have a place already picked out for where you're going to put that Jabba's palace, or that Bib Fortuna Boba Fett palace?
My wife's side of the bed.
She's still got how many more months left on Funny Girl? She's fine.
She's got 4 more months left in Funny Girl on Broadway, and then we'll see what happens. But our career, in order to do all this, to have this joy and work in this world, and be able to work with people that are like, yeah, I'm the guy from Lucasfilm that does the Huttese, and I'm going to use you because you seem to do it well. I'm like, yeah, I had to be here. I could be in New York, but they'd go, well, great, I can't use you. You're in New York. It's just the vagaries of our business.
Right.
And so we've had to be bi-coastal, and we're gonna see how it works. We'll see where the journey takes us next.
You're gonna have a Jabba's palace that you can put all of those Jabba's denizens in.
Yeah, it's gonna be, because
I finally have a place for them all to be together.
But it's gorgeous. I got to talk to very briefly Emily from the Hasbro team.
Hasbro is on the design side.
Yeah, the design of the
who specifically of the designer
of the vintage collection. And she probably thought I was insane, because I just want to thank you, because it was at that, because I was showing Mark, look at this, I have this on order, because day one I ordered it. Like, this is the coolest thing. And Mark's like, you're crazy. I'm like, I know. Like, that's Emily. I'm gonna thank her. Like, this is so cool. I can't wait to have it. It's like, great. I do voices for some Star Wars project. This is like, oh cool. I'm like, it's really great. Well, have you seen this one? I'm like, yeah, I bought it already. It's like, okay, gotta go. Bye.
I have a meeting right now.
Yeah. She's like, this old man seems very happy. He's singing a Cantina song.
So now you've got that. So that's going to come.
Yes.
You're going to have that display.
Yes.
For what is on the top of your list of things you would like to see that you still want, because you're not going to backfill. You say you're not going to go on eBay. You're not going to get things for the past. So you're waiting for they have to come back around.
Yeah.
So what do you want? What is tops on your wish list of things that would really excite you?
I want to be surprised and delighted.
Not an answer. You have to pick at least.
No, because I never thought there'd be a figure of Moff Jerjerrod. Never. You know, and that there's one. Well, there was one before. We had
Right,
one.
but that was in the period.
That was in that. And I'm like, well, what's the latest? I'm very excited about Skeleton Crew. I'm very excited about Ahsoka. Who's going to appear? What are they going to make? Do we get one of is it Balin? Balin Skull?
The in Skeleton Crew.
Yeah. No, in Ahsoka. We just
Oh,
saw the trailer.
the one that's
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
Joris Saipov.
Right. Yeah. I was like, are we going to get one of him? That would be super cool. Could they, can they tool that? Can they put the budget towards that? What's easy for them to budget? Maybe we'll get a Captain Pelion because they just need a new head. If Pelion
Well, I mean, then we're
features.
going to be getting. Yeah, I would hope we're going to get a Krennic, and
We are getting Krennic.
they
They've
did
announced it.
announce Pipeline.
Yeah.
Now that's right. We're going to
Krennic
get a
is
Krennic.
coming, and I love that.
But he's got to have the swappable cape, right? He's got to have his like rain cape. This is rain cape, right?
Yes, I don't know if they'll do that.
He's got his rain. He's got his rain cape, and then he's got his
It's the
formal,
white one, yeah.
his Sunday go to Vader cape.
Yeah, I think they would do that with a soft goods one, and I'm interested to see how they do it. I just got the set with Moff Gideon and the Dark Trooper and
Oh yeah, the rescue.
the rescue.
That-
Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
But you're not getting the N1.
No, I didn't have room. I think it's cool. There's something about.
But then you're going to start hanging them from the ceiling. That's the next
that would
step.
kill me, and it would kill other thing. There was just something about the Razor Crest. I never would have ordered something that big. I just didn't have room for it, and it just hit at the right time. We were pandemic and what they were offering, and I'm like, I've never done anything like this. I've never spent this much for a vehicle. I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then when it came, this is glorious. Every inch of it has been designed. Because
so jealous. I'm so.
You didn't get one?
That,
I shouldn't yell. Do you want mine? I'll
No.
give it to you.
You
I'm always
would
like, we're moving. Do you want my razor?
if you ever decide to part with it, please keep me in mind. But
I will.
no, because it was during one of our trivia nights, and I saw that thing in the background. I was like, "Of course you do. Of course you have the Razor Crest." My local
That was
comic
our-
book shop had one for a while on display, and I just was not in a position to get it. I missed the crowdfunding.
I did it. I've never done anything like that. And
But then when the job is that informed my job as Palace pre-order was knowing,
yeah,
I can't
just went,
miss out on.
This is too good, and they've created that you can make any scene you want. You can design it any way you want.
So then, what's your position on another potential HasLab if it's what it's supposedly?
If it's what is rumored, I probably won't get it. If it's what is rumored and based on what's coming up, I don't want to ruin anything. I would get it. I have a weird thing. I work in animation. That's what I do. I do I do voices for Marvel and DC and I've DreamWorks and all this stuff. And I had met Mr. Filoni at a session. They introduced him to me. He could not have been less interested. They were so nice. And I have a lot of friends that work on that show. The style of it, I've watched them all, and I go, it doesn't really speak to me. I wish it did. I wish I loved it more. I know it brings a lot of people joy.
But if they were to do figures accompanying it, it would be in the realistic style, which they've already done for the Black Series figures.
It would depend. I'm excited to see. We'll find out in July from what they have said.
And it would be a super big set. I think the size comparison for that would be close to that the big Millennium Falcon,
which I do not have. Which I do not.
That I do have.
Yeah, there's something about, and I watched all of Bad Batch, and I think D is amazing. But sometimes
have you worked with D?
Yes, a lot. I work with Steve Bloom a lot. He's amazing, and Fred Tatasciore, who are just the best in the business. I sit there in awe at what they do. But sometimes stylistically with Star Wars, they'll make it very flat in the animation, and that gets to me sometimes.
Speaking of D, we have that back there.
I was like, that's a
Are they?
flat choice. Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh,
Well, Dee and I have a long history actually because we both worked before I got here. I think it was in the early '90s. I worked theme park. I was at Walt Disney World at Pleasure Island, and Dee was at Universal.
I didn't know D
And
was a theme park
yeah, he was theme park stuff.
performer.
Yeah,
So was he doing a similar type show over at Universal? What was he?
yeah. I think he was like a Streetmosphere thing, and he also did voices in I think the Ghostbusters show,
Which also Mark Gagliardi does
yeah.
Streetmospheres now at
And I think
Universal.
that was when he was working on Secrets of the Hidden Temple and everything, you know. And but we were there doing theme park stuff and doing that joyful time. And so we've talked a lot. Um, we always I get in the before times because I think his kids were going to NYU, and I'd be like going to the theater and with Deb, and they're like, "Oh, it's Dee and his wife." And a couple times we'd sit next to each other out of the blue. We're like, "Hey, hi," you know. So we go to a lot of theater together, and I just think you know I think the world of him. I think he's an amazing, amazing performer.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a weird place to be in when you're 2/3 of the cast uh,
but
of the show.
that's what you want to be, and he just he sells it. But sometimes it's very, you know, because I can see it. Maybe that's their selling. Just throw it away, make it flat, make it military, da 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 da. You know, and sometimes the joy of the side characters gets lost, and sometimes it's gorgeous. Um, my friend Noshir Dalal was on season 1 and season 2. It was Admiral Rampart. That I was like, oh, he's fabulous. And I think Crispin Freeman was recently on as a villain in a fabulous episode with Crosshair. He was like the villain in that Crosshair episode. If you saw it in the wintry, I was like, ah, it's really
Right.
great. And I was like, they're you know they're giving him stuff to do. And then sometimes they'll just the guests will be very, you know, I'm delivering a line, I'm this, I'm that, and it's stylistically that's what they go for. But it just sometimes as a style it doesn't grab me as much as I wish it did. Looks gorgeous. Everyone's gonna hate me. He seemed very
You're
nice, but he
you're
doesn't
getting
seem to.
you're getting that HasLab. You know you're getting that HasLab. There's no
Probably,
way you're not getting that HasLab.
probably.
Because
I
you
mean,
don't want to be the same thing I fear on the other
with it.
side of that HasLab. If you have not gotten it, going, I wish I had gotten it, and then it's too late to get it at the more reasonable. I have no idea what it's going to cost. It's probably going to be something that we're going to look at and go, oh, geez, really? But it will be more expensive on the other side of it.
If it was a cantina with some aliens, definite buy, definite buy. I mean, never thought that would happen. I remember, um, even before I was like, that would make a great, you know, theme restaurant. You go in and you sit in the cantina, you know, before it was thought of. And yeah, I love Galaxy's Edge, but if they made a cantina, boy, oh boy,
You'd find space for that.
oh yes, that would be on my side of the bed.
So
So we'll see.
ultimately, when you get
I'd
to
be like, so you're asking me what I would like, because it's hard because I'm very excited about the Acolyte. I'm very excited. I don't know any of the characters yet, and I'm like, who could that be? I want, you know, the performers they've picked are great, and I'm like, can't wait to see that. And I kind of know I would like one of those figures because it's a period, you know, High Republic. I don't know a lot about it. I didn't read the books. I want to delve into that period, and I'm like, that's gonna be where I'm like, oh, give me more, give me more, give me more.
have you been playing the Jedi Fallen Order or
No,
Jedi Survivor?
no, I haven't been doing a lot of gaming. Um, our gaming set broke in a move, and we haven't bought one new. And it was a weird time. I was playing a lot because I wanted to play a lot of the stuff that I was in. And this was maybe 2018 or 19. And my thumb locked into place out of the blue, would not move. It was rigid and it locked into place. And I was playing a lot on the controller. And went to a hand specialist here in LA who was Eastern European and reminded me too much of my dad. And he was like, well, just to tell you, you'll never get the use of your hand back. So you have to understand this. All right, we do surgery. I'm like, all right, surgery. So we're doing the surgery, and he's like, move your finger. Move your finger. I'm like, I'm trying. He's like, it doesn't work. Close him up. And then he comes to the other side. He goes, it didn't work. You won't get the use of your hand back. I'm like, oh, so I went to
Great
physical
bedside
therapy.
manner.
Yes, but Russian, is like this. This is the way it's going to be.
I tell
Your
you
hand
the
does not
truth.
work. It's not going to work.
What am I
I
gonna
did
lie
my
to
best.
you?
Yeah, I am the best hand man here. If I can't make it work, you'll never get your hand back. And I went to physical therapy, and this wonderful physical therapist, she said, let's prove him wrong. And we worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and I got my thumb back. We don't know what it was. He thought there was all sorts of stuff that, telling me it could be this, it's this, it's this, it's this. So they sliced open my hand, and he's like, I fixed it. It doesn't work. So now I'm always worried that I'm going to get back into playing and I'll hurt my hand again.
Or you can consider it part of the physical therapy to keep it flexible.
That's true. But I think I was playing Shadow of War, the Mordor game that I did a bunch of orc voices for. And I love that world because I love how immersive gaming is. And that's why I was like, oh, Jedi. I didn't play Jedi Fallen Order. I'd love to play Jedi Survivor. I did have an audition for it during pandemic that we had to set up a camera on the other side of this and do a scene. And I was like, they don't tell you what it's for. I'm like, I think this is that. And it was super cool. And, sometimes you get it. A lot of times you don't. I was like, darn, that would have been cool. But that's just.
But you're J. Jonah Jameson.
It's one of my favorite things ever to do.
And the Incredible Hulk.
And the Hulk, and there's a couple more.
And here's hoping that
I can't even tell you what's coming out.
It would be lovely since there is going to be a Spider-Man 2 game, Spider-Man 3 game.
They're doing another one?
Is it? Yeah, I hear they're doing another one.
Oh,
it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have you back if they were to have you back in the game.
It would be nice.
But regardless, we know that Jonah's still out there somewhere.
He's doing something. Look, it was supposed to be one day with, of recording. And they're like, it's a side thing. There's a couple podcasts. You'll fly by a window and you might hear this. And they just fell in love with what we did.
You turned into
Chris Zimmerman, the director.
Atmosphere.
Chris Zimmerman, the director, is one of the finest. Amanda Wyatt. There's some great voiceover directors. And Chris it was one of my first times working with her, and she's really tough, but really good. And there were those big paragraphs. And it was my first day in, and she's like, okay, well, you know this guy, and you're a theater guy. You understand where we're going here. What we're going to do is we're not going to show it to you beforehand. We're just going to flash it on the screen, and you start at word one and go. Ride the wave of the line. I never forget that direction. So a lot of what you hear is first take. They'd flash it up, and I've never seen it before, but I'm in the moment and I'm going because it's like a table read. And I'm hitting all the levels and going, well, where am I going to take this in like those microseconds? Because my dumb brain works that way. Going, I understand how to do, I need an emotional switch here. And you're reading ahead and you're like, but what's the math of this? Got to go there, got to be, And for some reason, I get that. And she was just like, well, you're going to do that from now on. I'm never going to show you anything. And I get scared because I'm like, well, what if that was a fluke on that day? Because I'm like, it's first day, I got to be good. But that's it. And they're just like, that's
you've proven it not to be a fluke.
Well, I'm very lucky. The writers are amazing on that game. Insomniac tells a beautiful story. The actors, Yuri Lowenthal as Peter Parker is just phenomenal. Najid is I did get to be on set for the second one, the one with Miles. I did a brief motion capture thing.
And that was during the was it the Rhino run through?
Yeah.
You get to play Santa Claus.
You got to play Santa Claus. You didn't think like you're not going to see him, but we want you to do this thing. And it was just a happy set, a creative set. Everybody there just going, we're making magic and sharing what we love. And Chris is there working with you and again, hit it from this angle, hit it from that angle. So every moment meant something. It's not like, now, Rhino's going to run through and you say something and that's it. It's like, no, what's the emotion we're going for here? What's the, how is this going to impact somebody? How is this going to inspire a kid who's watching to go, I may start with a figure or a game or something that brings me joy. And this is the first thing that I see. And where does my journey go? I kind of brought it around. How did that happen? I was like, but that's what we do. It's like what you and I do and all of our friends. We're lucky to do it. And we might be inspiring people to go, I know it's hard, but I'm going to try. Because this is, what we do. Someone once told me it's difficult until it's not difficult. And then it's still difficult. Because it's not an easy career to be carny folk.
No, it's certainly not reliable.
No. And you have good years, and I'm very lucky, and I've had some great years that I can buy that, Jabba's throne room and go, I don't have room for it. This just makes me happy. Can I do this? And Deb will go, well, can we go to Italy? I'm like, yes.
Could Jabba come with?
No, I did. My dad, I used to travel with figures all the time. This was part of the Star Wars thing. When my dad would go on trips, because he was a clothing designer, had men's clothing stores on Worth Avenue and in the Hamptons and everything, in the weird way that I grew up. And we'd always give him a figure that we loved, a toy, could be a stuffed toy or something, when he traveled. So he would bring it home safe, and he would be safe. So then I started to travel with a figure. I'm like, I always got to have an action figure when I'm traveling. Just one. That means I'm going to get home safe.
So which one was it? Which one would make the travel more
it
often?
depended on what was, what was great at that time. The one that it didn't make the list, but Boba Fett went to Italy.
Really?
Yeah. Because
do you have any photos of him in Italy? Do you take?
I don't. And I saw people at Star Wars Celebration in London, and they'd have the picture, Joseph, and I'm like, I should do that. I should have done that.
So your next trip, you're going. When is your next trip to New York?
Probably. It depends on what's going to happen, because as we know, there may be strikes coming. So if there is strikes, then probably July.
But your next trip,
my next trip, I've got a lot there.
Who are you gonna take?
If it comes in time, it could be the Tusken Warrior. If it comes in time.
Otherwise, it's going to be Piet.
Oh, Piet's great. I have my older Piet. He made it. But it's also like, I know I have 2 of the Tusken Warrior. So if anything happens, if it gets scuffed up or, goodness forbid, it gets lost, I've got another one. I know it's supposed to get me home safe, but I'm like, I know I will travel with that. When I came here, I was like, I'm going to bring a TIE fighter pilot because they're flying us to LA. And, so we do that. That's my craziness. You always go, it's my private thing that I don't share, but that's what this is about. The stories that we're sharing about how we come to collecting and what it means to us and the joy it gives us.
Oh, I mean, it's, otherwise, we wouldn't continue to do it if it did not bring us somewhat modicum of joy, because it's not inexpensive to maintain. So if it's going to be the vice that we have.
I grew up and my dad liked horses, so we rode horses, and we had a farm for a while, and I rode English, and that was like, you might as well just go take every bit of money I have to feed, and it's not just like we'll have one horse. It's like I had a horse and my sister had a horse, and then I started jumping and showing horses, and like, well, you need one for, dressage, and you need one for this, and you need one for that. I'm like, we have too many horses.
And they're very hard to fly with.
We flew one over from Ireland. I got too many stories. We flew one over because Dad loved it, and we flew one over from Ireland.
If that's what he loved, then those
and
horses were his action figures.
Horses were his action figure for a long time, and it didn't end well. It was like we had some great horse years, and then it was like, well, we're selling all the horses in the ranch and the this and the that because this is expensive.
Speaking of customs,
yes, sir.
I did want to share this with folks and I've shared this on Instagram and
please do.
photos of it. but this was a 3D sculpt. I don't know who did the 3D sculpt, but it was
Ooh.
printed and painted by the 3D Panda. Great action figure to printer.
wow.
They're doing a line of Spaceballs
Oh, wow.
figure toys right now, so go check those out. But they very kindly sent me a
I saw
Carson
that one.
Teva.
Thank you for pronouncing it right. He said it this season. That's absolutely glorious.
And it is just the paint job on it is absolutely perfect. Now what's
I
great
thought he
about
was coming
this,
this year. I thought he was coming this year.
the fact that they just announced a helmet was a weird sort of thing when everyone's like, come on, just give him, you're not going to give him a Black Series or a vintage collection figure? What's
We
going
have
on?
2 or 3 slots left in vintage.
Well,
So
what's
who knows?
great is, so
Let's say that.
to do this,
Yeah.
because this is a resin printing, and it's concerned, it's not the the material you'd have in a normal figure. It's
Mhm.
magnets
Oh,
is what they use to do it, and the magnets are strong enough that you can do full posing, and he stands up fine. But that also means you can very easily pop that off
and customize.
and give him his helmeted head,
Oh.
which is, look at how great that looks.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I
So it
know
was
you've
very,
been
very kind of them to send that over.
well, you've been on the forefront of we need Paul's action figure. He's a wonderful actor and it's a great character.
Just for, not just us, but for Paul's sake. you you have one of the biggest, most lovable collectors out there, an enthusiastic collector, and he's a major character on this show. Hasbro, come on, just something. Just, I don't get
Just
it,
do it.
but
Well,
at least there are
that would be a
options.
want.
This,
That
yeah,
would be a want.
this is where
Let's
they're
say
fair.
that. That's would be what I want. If they made it this year, if there's 2 more slots and we get a Carson Teva, I would be very happy.
Oh, look, it's Mr. McGregor. There's a deep cut for someone. So, but
Well,
that would
that
be nice.
seems like a wonderful journey that we've taken. I
It
hope
is,
your viewers
and I'm going to
can
leave you with
go,
this. You have
yes,
to
sir.
decide if you get this.
Mm,
This is something I had to get because I have been picking up a lot of Jabba stuff,
mm.
and this is a Jabba that was released in 2008.
Oh,
But I think it's one of my favorite Jabbas
oh, wow.
because of the stylization on it, because it is based on the animated,
On the animated with his protocol droid.
but it has so much personality in that sculpt
That's glorious.
that it's just incredible. And yeah, you can see he's not been opened yet. Here's the back of the package.
That's glorious. I loved those battle packs. I remember those days of walking in and just seeing so many of them with the Ewoks and the rebel pilots.
And look what he comes with. He
Yeah.
doesn't come with a full throne, but he
But
has the railing, which you can put that on your Jabba. I mean, sorry, your Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett palace that's coming, and make a Jabba's throne.
this, or you leave Bib Fortuna there, and what
He is
story
not
does he
staying
tell?
there. He is not
You
staying
don't
there.
like him
He
on
is
there?
not. The story he could tell is lying on the floor where Boba left him.
Well, that's Matthew Wood, right? Who's
That is Matthew Wood doing
the
that.
sound guy.
Sound
for-
guy, General Grievous, the
Yeah.
battle droids, the Roger
Yeah.
Roger. That's all.
Yeah, and you're like, and he's part of that now. You never know again where the story will take you. I haven't met him yet. I would love to meet him. I think he's wonderful. I think
You
he's
hear
going
that,
out with-
Matthew? You can meet J.
Oh,
Jonah
do you know him?
Jameson.
I believe he might. I see him in a lot of pictures with a friend of mine, Helen Sadler, who we do a lot of.
You
Star
need to
Wars
call
stuff
up
together.
D and say, let's have a lunch like we
I
used
don't want
to.
to bother it. I'm always like,
bother
that's
him.
my thing. That's my thing. Where like, I don't want to bother people. No. I tend to be very, very, you know, solo, because sometimes I'll see people, even with Hal, I'm like, I don't want to bother you. I should bother him soon. One story and then we'll end. I'm sorry. So a very dear friend of mine said, would you officiate my wedding? I'm like, no, I don't. No, I'm not gonna. That's not what I do. I'm not. Okay, I just wanted you to know that it's going to be at the Harry Houdini estate. And as you know, this is him talking. My mother makes Muppets for Sesame Street, so we're gonna have a lot of Muppets, and you have a lot of friends who are Muppeteers, so they're gonna be there, and one of them singing Ave Maria as we walk out. So it'll be, got a lot. Grover's probably gonna be there, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm becoming a reverend. So I am now a reverend, and in the end of June, I'm performing a wedding.
Wow. Well, they certainly made a strong enough case for you.
I went, and Deb's taking a day off from the show to fly here to be there.
I love how it
can't
was.
miss this.
You're a very dear friend, and it would mean a lot to us if you could officiate. And you're like, there'll be Muppets. I'm in.
Well, because you're always afraid. I don't want to screw up their wedding. I want this to be special. What do I know from doing that? And all of a sudden I started going, oh, well, learn the mechanics of it, but speak from the heart and be short, unlike the night. I was like, be short, do a thing.
I think you need to prepare a strong 15 minutes of material. Just go off and.
I told Deb, I was like, so, the father of the bride, he brings her up, and they're standing there, and I go, a rabbit walks into a butcher shop, and she's like, what does that have to do with the wedding? It's like, nothing. It's a funny gag.
You know what?
Like, no, don't do that.
Open it up to the audience. I'd like to take suggestions for the vows. Can I have?
I hope they do their own. I hope they write their own, because I have to do that's what I'm scared about. It's like, what if I forget? What if I do it? Because I'd really love to do it from memory and make it. But, Hal had done that, and I always want to, talk to Hal and go, what do I do? What do I do?
Marriage.
That's what I thought. I was like, but I'm worried about, so I'm doing it, and it means a lot, and I want it to be very,
you should need to reach out to Hal regardless. And this is I'm going to say it right here in public with an audience.
Yes.
Hal loves you. You love Hal. Reach out to him. Your friends. Go have a lunch. You're in town. I'm not near anybody right now. I've seen no one in years.
I haven't seen you since 2017.
New York Comic-Con.
Yeah.
20.
I have the drawing still. You drew a J. Jonah, and I have it. It was wonderful. I still have it.
Which folder is that stuck in which box? And is this
we have some files here, and that stayed with it, because we just had, one of the reasons we may have to move. We're on a hill here, where we're living, and with all the rains, the basement flooded twice, and a lot of things were destroyed because we were using the basement as storage, and the owner just went, I think I'm going to sell, because this is
going to happen.
This is going to happen again, and you never had rains like that in Los Angeles. We certainly,
but anymore, we can't predict. You'll never have them again, because who knows?
So we'll see. But some things were damaged. A lot of files were damaged. A lot of fan art that people had sent me. I'm like, heartbroken.
Some things like that drawing were damaged long before the rain.
No, it was bad. That was a fabulous day, and it was the first time I met you, and we got together, and we're like, you're the greatest guy. You're so full of kindness and generosity, and you know the best people. You put out great content. You produce great content, and when I'm watching Star Wars Explained, and it's like, oh, Ken Plume, I'm like, that's my friend Ken. It's like, Ken's talking. It's just this wonderful connection, that you're the glue. And that is a compliment. They're like, I'm the glue. It's like, no, you're the glue that brings all these people together. Sometimes, like during the pandemic, in the darkest times, we had something to look forward to laugh and share stories, and just go and meet cool people we'd never met. and play games that sometimes we were really good and a lot of times we were really bad. And
I'd like to pick
knowing that
Disney again.
I'd like to pick Disney again and not know anything, not know any answer. But all of us are such big Disney fans, Hal and Mark and Bill Corbett and Virginia Corbett. We're just like, let's do it. Oh, I don't know anything about the Fox and the Hound anymore.
You all had hills you would die on just because I knew they were honey traps of categories for you.
It was joyful.
For
And
Hal, it was
that's what you
SNL.
are. Oh, and wrestling when you just read and go, the blank came into the ring with a blank and was known for hollering blank. And he'd go,
But
Macho Man
here's the
Savage
thing.
with the macho crown. And he was known for yelling, oh, yeah. And you're like, how did you know that?
But I could not, if he got it wrong and he would argue and about how ludicrous it was, as he didn't have to choose it. He
That's
didn't
true.
have to. That was all those categories don't have to be chosen.
Well,
People make the choice.
it was a wonderful choice to be there.
Well, I appreciate.
Thank you for
immensely
having me on. Thank you for everybody that watched. And I hope that, their collecting journey is as joyful as mine was. Because
Well,
it means a lot.
well, I know for a fact that the journey through this episode has been an immense enjoyment for me, and I appreciate immensely you being on the show
Oh,
and just the chance to talk with you again about this thing.
yeah.
Even though it hurt a little bit to think about that Razor Crest and about not having it.
Now I'm hoping that we move to a smaller place.
No, you will not. That thing, you are going, if you move to a smaller house, you will buy wires and you will hang it from the ceiling and it will be flying above you in the kitchen.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. No, it's
All right. Like
Have
you. It
have
is
you
great
seen
like you. What?
have you seen Adam Savage and Norm Chan on Tested customizing
No, I
the
should
Razor
watch that.
Crest?
I should watch that.
Go check it
Really?
out. One, for the pain of watching them break the pieces apart and to be able to do it, which is a bit painful to see. But what they do to weather it and sort of plus
Oh,
the Razor Crests are incredible because they each were working on their own. So it's like they're doing dueling customizations of the Razor Crest and then starting like light kits, and
oh my gosh. But
it
that's what
is
this
wonderful.
does. That's what this does. And
So
again, I hope that it brings them as much joy as I know it brings both of us.
so what is the latest announced released project that you can talk about right now that you can encourage, besides people go play Spider-Man games, go play Overwatch, go play all the wonderful things that
There's a lot of stuff.
they know that exist?
There's some really great ones that I can't wait to tell you.
And they have a
It's-
series on Hulu they can watch. Again,
Yes,
with you.
Abominable and the Invisible City. We have 2 seasons out right now. It's a beautiful show, and I was thrilled to be a part of it. Um, and just great writers, great team that I finally met at DreamWorks, and we had a little party to celebrate our first season, and I got to finally meet everyone because it was all done remote, and just share the joy of what we made. And it was really, really, it just meant the world. It was really special. Um, there's just some great stuff that's about to be announced, and then some amazing
It
stuff
always
that's
happens
next year.
every
Does
time
it?
we talk. It's
I
always
know.
on the cusp.
Well, there's some like life-changing things that'll be next year that I'm like, how did that happen? So that's next year. But it takes forever. And again, people are fighting time and technology. But yeah, that's out there. There's some wonderful episodes of Big City Greens on Disney and Amphibia that I did a couple appearances on that. There's a lot of DC movies that they put me in, the animated movies that are pretty cool. That I got to play Lex Luthor in one, and I got to play Brainiac in another. I got to play Solomon Grundy. And it's like,
I'm trying to think. There's something I just saw,
mm,
and I cannot for the life of me remember, but remember seeing your name on there, and going, "Oh, Darin," and I
I'm very
can't
lucky.
remember what it was.
I'm very lucky. Look,
You're all over
I
the place.
I'm very lucky. I worked a lifetime and got a lot of rejection and a lot of kicks and a lot of great years and a lot of bad years. And all of a sudden we took a chance and it could have gone the other way because it's timing, and it worked. And now people, because in the beginning people were like, we don't need him. We got John DiMaggio, we got Dee, we got Fred. We don't need him. And he's got, he did some stuff in New York, and that's great, but we don't need him here. And I now am part of that little thing through whatever alchemy worked, and people are very nice, and I get to work on stuff that is an actual dream.
Well, it's lovely and wonderful to see that happening for you, and to see Dev on Broadway. And
yeah, she's making her Broadway debut at our age again, and it's like we're having
never too old to, and many years ahead. Not gonna be the last.
So proud of her. She's the best. I'm very lucky, and we're very lucky to have you as a friend.
Well, I'm very lucky to have the two of you in my life, and I appreciate you doing this again. And so, just because now we're gonna have moments to ourselves outside this episode, so let's formally close the episode.
Yes.
But I want to say thank you to everyone for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Kukapwa. I'm doing the Hatties version.
And I'm gonna do Hermiodal.
Hermiodal
We're gonna go get some barbecue.
Barbecues and beacon.
Yeah. Tell them on to get that spit.
Finish up. I'm sorry.
So if you enjoyed this, I'm going to make this really professional. It's not been professional in previous episodes. If you've enjoyed this, if you're not a subscriber already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video. It's if you'd like to support it, consider becoming a patron becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/Ken Plume. There's also a tipping link if you'd like to do that, which is like a one-time donation. Or the Amazon wish list is also down there. If you would like to send anything from that, you'll get a lovely, very heartfelt thank you, and you'll see it on an open chat in the future, because space is limited, but there's a lot of wonderful stuff out there, and everything's appreciated. And there's also equipment and stuff for the channel that's also on there. Thank you all. Follow me on all the socials. Stick around. There'll be more episodes coming up. But thank you again, Darin, for being on the show.
Thank you. It is an absolute pleasure. I love being a part of your Patreon. I'm one of your Patreon subscribers, and just love what you get. So he's one of the best. And thank you. May your story continue in this universe that we love.
And now from Efont Mon and Hermiodal, we're saying goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I don't think he cleaned that spit. We're done.